All right, let's talk politics and marriage, because I'm hearing from some of my subscribers right now that this is a hot topic at home. And I can imagine right now, if you find yourself on the opposite side of the political fence or on the opposite side of political views from your spouse, things can get pretty intense pretty quickly. So I want to talk about this today, and I really want to focus on answering two questions. One is, can you have a healthy marriage when you disagree on something as profound as your political views? And two, if you can, how do you do it? How do you have conversations that don't just spiral into arguments constantly? The answer to the first question is simply yes. Yes, you can have a healthy marriage and you can have different political views. Remember in high school debate class, if you ever did a debate in high school or college, you would get randomly assigned one perspective and you had to argue for it. And it was part of the art of debate, was to have a discussion, a heated discussion with strong opinions on both sides, but to have the flexibility in your brain to be able to take either side and understand where both parties were coming from. That's a skill that we are losing very quickly as a society. When we see somebody or talk to somebody and they don't share our views, we are so quick to lump them over. They're the other, they're the bad, they're the problem. Here's the thing though. That's a really natural thing to do, and I'm going to explain why. There's actually a biological evolutionary reason that we are so quick to label the other, to label the enemy, but it's also exactly the thing that's keeping us from getting what we want, from promoting our cause. It's keeping us, viewing the other person as the enemy actually keeps us from getting them on our side or having any chance of convincing them of our perspective. So I'm going to explain why this makes sense, why we all do this, why it's natural and normal, because you do it and I do it, and understanding why is really helpful. But then I'm going to show you why it's not really effective and why we need to overcome that like biological default that we're operating from. We need to overcome it. We have the skills to overcome it. And doing that is going to help us have more productive, friendly conversations with people who don't share our views, whether that's your spouse or your boss or your neighbor or just the guy in line at the grocery store. We need to start being able to have actual conversations with people who hold different opinions than us. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere good as a society. And I think if you're struggling with this in your marriage, you know it's not going anywhere good for you as a couple either. So let's talk biology for a minute. Why are we so quick to throw anyone who doesn't agree with us into the other pile, to make them the enemy? If you think about how our ancestors evolved, it actually really makes a lot of sense that we want to group people into being on our side or being against us. If you think about our ancestors evolving in a world that was often very hostile, often very dangerous, and where often other people were the danger. Right? It's not new that we go to war. We have been at war as humans for a long time. We fight over resources, the best hunting grounds, the best water source, the best shelter. It's very natural. But to do that, if we're going to live in a society where other humans are a threat, we need to understand who's on our team, who are we fighting with and for, and who are we fighting against. It is a natural process. It's something we have evolved to do, to segregate ourselves into groups. There's been some really fascinating studies on this. They've done it with children that were adopted into different cultures, and they found that children will actually, they do these facial recognition studies. So it's basically your ability to tell the difference in people's faces. And they find that, say, a white child raised in a white community can tell white faces apart more easily than Japanese faces. They can distinguish individuals more easily. But if you take that white child and you raise them in Japan in a Japanese family, the white child can distinguish the Japanese faces and it can't tell the white faces apart. It says, oh, all white people look alike, even though that child looks white. It's not about our identity, it's about who we perceive our group to be. So it doesn't matter if I'm a woman, if I'm white, if I have a particular political belief, it's who I perceive my group to be, the people on my team. And I might define that by what they look like, by what they sound like, by the things that they say, or more and more often in our society now, by the ideas that we share. But what those studies, these facial recognition studies in children show us is that our brains do something really interesting. Not only do they decide about self and about team us and team other, but they also change the way we perceive, the level of detail we perceive in other. So once I've decided you're not part of my group, you're other, I become like the child who was raised in Japan who can't distinguish any of the white faces. They all look alike to me. right? All Biden supporters look alike to me. All Trump supporters look alike to me. And we might not say these things so clearly, right? Might not be so aware of them, but that's exactly the point. I want you to start becoming aware. What is your mental image of a Republican, of a Democrat, of a socialist, of a capitalist, of a communist? What do you believe that person looks like? You have a mental image of them, trust me. And I want you to start questioning your own biases, your own definition of self and other, because what I think you'll notice is exactly what happened to those children is happening in your own brain. People that you identify as part of your team, people who are on your side, who share your ideology, your beliefs, you are more likely to see those people as individuals. And you are more likely to see people who don't agree with you as kind of just a generic enemy. This isn't something intentional. This isn't a conscious choice you're making. You're not a bad person. This is just something brains do to help us identify who's part of our team, right? We need to know the individuals on our team if we're going to survive out in the savannah and protect our territory, make sure we have access to water and the good hunting grounds. I need to know the individuals in my group. I don't need to know the individuals of the opposing tribe who's coming to kill us, right? I just need to know that they're the enemy and I need to protect us from them. I want you to think about the repercussions of this is just a natural thing that happens in our brain. They evolved to do it. I want you to think of the repercussions for that in your marriage, right? If your spouse holds different political views than you, if your spouse has a different opinion on some important piece of current events that's going right now, they suddenly, when you start talking about those things, that person is no longer part of your team. They're going to lose some of their individual features to you, and they're going to take on whatever generic enemy feeling or visual you associate with the other side, the bad guy. Your brain literally stops seeing your spouse as an individual human, your partner, this person you love, and starts seeing them as a generic other. At best, a generic other, at worst, a generic enemy. Most of us aren't aware of this, but we have these subconscious mental images that go along with all of our thoughts, and they really do influence the way we show up, the way we react, the way we talk, the way we are with other people. So when your mental image of your spouse, of your partner, goes from being this person who's on your team, this loving, supportive partner, this person you're working together with that you care about, when it goes from this individual and that mental image gets replaced with what you think a Trump supporter is, with what you think a Biden supporter is, with what you think a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a conservative, whatever language, right, is on the opposing side for you. There's words that trigger emotions for you, and there's mental images that go along with them. When you start seeing your spouse in that way, that feeling and that mental image is going to come up, and it's going to dramatically affect the way you talk to this person. You're no longer talking to your partner of 20 years. Now you're talking to the enemy, to the other, to the bad guy. So how do you fix it, right? You do have a lot of charged emotions around your political beliefs. Of course you do. These things are important. They do have an influence on all of our futures and the direction our country goes, on the opportunities that are available to us, on how safe we are, on how free we are. Yes, absolutely. These are important topics. They need to be discussed, but you can't have a conversation with the enemy because your brain goes into primitive survival mode. It sees there is an other, they are attacking, that is dangerous. And when we're in survival mode, our prefrontal cortices are really not that on board. We're not able to stay calm. We're not able to think very clearly and rationally. We are survival. We're in that fight or flight, protect, lash out. You see this, right? Every time you have a conversation with somebody who has a different political opinion than you. Notice how often people are to yell, to scream, to storm off, to slam a door. These conversations escalate and get out of control very, very easily. And it's because people are in survival mode when they start talking about these things. They're charged topics. They have an identity associated with us. They define me and you as on the same team or against each other. And if we're against each other, you are now dangerous. You are a threat. My survival brain is kicking on, and I am acting out of powerful survival emotions and instincts. Hard to have a conversation with your spouse about their political views when you're in survival mode. So what do you do about this? Let's talk about some skills, some tricks, some tools that you can use to get your brain out of survival mode, get back to viewing your partner as a partner, as somebody you care about who's on your team, so that you can actually have a rational discussion. Because yeah, you should talk about these things, and you want to know what your partner thinks and why they believe what they do. And you want them to understand you and see you and your opinion as valid, right? We can't do that when we're fighting each other like, tribes in the savannah. The first thing you have to do is get really honest with yourself about what those mental images are, what the thoughts and feelings associated with them are. So this is a great journaling exercise. I want you just to think about your political view and notice, how does it feel when you use the words associated with it? Maybe it's Democrat or Republican, maybe it's liberal or conservative, maybe it's capitalist, maybe it's socialist. Whatever your identity is, however you identify, and I realize, guys, that I'm vastly generalizing and separating into two groups, and there's a lot more going on than that, but whatever it is for you, however you're identifying your beliefs right now, write down a few words, pick 5 words that resonate to you with how you see yourself and kind of your side on this argument. Maybe you use words like rational, calm, realistic, hopeful, liberating, safe, right? Whatever it is that you identify with. 5 words, write them down. And then I want you to look in your brain, when you think about that kind of person, somebody who's on your side of the argument, what do you see in your mind's eye? What kind of images come up for you? It might be a person, it might be a place, it might be a representation of your nation or of your political party, it might be a color, just any visual information. Don't censor it, there's no wrong answers, you can't mess this up. Just pay attention. What kind of visual information is associated with your side of the story, with your political perspective? Then I want you just to turn your attention inward, close your eyes, think about like looking down into your body. What do you feel? What do you feel when you're in touch with that identity? How does it feel to you? Write it all down, then take a deep breath, and we're going to do the same thing with the other side. I want you to write down the words that represent the other side for you. I want you to get in touch with what you see in your mind's eye. You guys, this might be really uncomfortable. It's hard to look at the places that our brain has these little biases or shifts, but notice, what do you see? Are the images you see stylized? Are they unrealistic? Are they oversized? Do people's, maybe you see the person on the other side as like having a massive mouth or a really cartoonish head. And maybe there's some feature, the color of their hair, the shape of their clothes. Maybe there's something about them that's really stereotypical or overly stylized or outdone or unrealistic. I want you to get really honest with yourself. What do you see in your mind's eye when you think about the other team? What does your generic bad guy on that side look like? Notice those images and then notice how you feel. Notice what happens when you think about those words you wrote down, when you look at that image that's in your mind, what's happening in your body? How are you feeling? You might notice some tension. You might notice some anxiety, a feeling of threat, of danger. Just pay attention, observe, and write it all down. All right, that's the first exercise, getting really honest and clear on what you're thinking and seeing and feeling about both sides of this political debate. You guys, it doesn't have to be politics. You can do this on any issue that's coming up as an argument for you and your spouse. Then I want you to notice when you talk to your spouse, when do you stop seeing your partner and start seeing and feeling this other, right? That uncomfortable, threatening other. When does that come alive for you? Is it a word that they use? Is it something that comes on television? Is it a comment they make or a tone of voice? What is the trigger? What do they do that triggers to you? What's the signal that they're no longer on your team, that now they are the other? Now they are operating as this like enemy agent in your home who is dangerous. What triggers that feeling of threat for you? Get really specific and start to notice it. That is half of this work, is just observing, becoming aware, really specifically, precisely aware of the moment where your perspective shifts, where your partner stops being your partner and starts becoming the other, the bad guy, the enemy. Bringing your attention to it, noticing it, going, oh yeah, look at that. I just stopped seeing them as my spouse. I just started seeing them as the enemy. Your awareness, making that conscious, is how you start to undo the habit, because that's what you're in. You have a habit of deciding that your partner's the other. You have a habit of seeing them in a certain way. It's just a habit. Your brain is just used to doing it. That's what it does. It does it all day. It does it with every person you meet. Once you learn something about their political ideology, start noticing, be like, whoa, I just stopped seeing the individual. Whoa, yep, there it went again. Grocery store. Ooh, on the radio, I heard that guy start talking. I stopped thinking of him as an individual person, and I started seeing and feeling this other, this enemy that I've already defined, that I've written down in my journal. Awareness is key. That's going to be powerful in and of itself. That's going to help you start to shift back to seeing the other person as an individual. But I want to give you some tools to help make that shift a little easier. So there's two things I want you to do. One, I want you to really, really, truly consider this and tell me if you agree with it. Humans aren't evil. We do bad things all of the time. We are not bad. Everything we do makes perfect sense. Humans are always making the best choice they can make with the options as they understand them in the moment. Notice that's really different than saying people make the best choice. Obviously, we don't make the best choices a lot of the time. But with our perception, with our understanding of things, we make the best choice we can in the moment. Right? Usually that choice is driven by a desire to protect ourselves, to be connected, to be loved, or to achieve something. Our understanding of a situation is almost never complete. It's almost never whole. We make the best choices we can, the information we have, in the way we perceive it, moment by moment. What I'm trying to say is that there's nobody out there thinking like, what's the evilest thing I can do today to destroy the world, right? But the movies promote this idea so much, right? That there's just like these bad people out there who's like, they're plotting. They're like, let's just destroy the planet. Ha 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 ha. Like, no, it is not like that. Life is not that simple. It is not black and white. It is not good versus evil. That is not how the human brain works. People are not out there trying to figure out what are the worst things that they can do to torment other humans and destroy their planet every day. Right? Like that is not how we operate. People are making the best choice they think that they can make for themselves, for their children. And you might not agree with those choices and you might think very differently. But the fact is, they're not making those choices because they're evil. They're trying to do the right thing as they understand it with the information they have. This is a small thing because you're like, well, yeah, but the things they do are still horrible. Sure, maybe you think that. However, it is a really important distinction to see somebody as a human who's making the best choice they can make right now with the information they have and the belief system they have and the information as they see it. Right? Here's a human being making the best choice they can make with what they've got versus there's a bad, evil person out there trying to hurt me. You see the difference? There's another guy over here, another girl over here doing the best they can with what they got versus there is a monstrous person out there trying to destroy us all. It's a massive difference to your brain. It's a massive difference to the amount of threat you feel, and it changes the way you communicate. So I want you to spend some time questioning that. Like, am I seeing other people as evil? Am I seeing leaders or past leaders of our nation as evil? Am I seeing other humans around the world as bad guys? Is it us versus them? Whenever you slip into that mentality, your brain is not being honest with you, and it's simplifying. It is oversimplifying, which is useful, right? It kept our ancestors alive. That's what allowed us to like fight off opposing tribes. And it's really hard to defend your water source, to defend your hunting grounds when you're like really connecting and humanizing the other person on the other side of things and really feeling for the fact that like their river dried up and they don't have anything to eat over there. But it's really hard to protect your territory, to protect your resources when you're empathizing with the guys on the other side. So of course, we tend to villainize, we tend to oversimplify. It's something our brains learned. It helped our ancestors survive. It's not helping us survive anymore. In fact, it's maybe what's going to kill us. Our inability, it seems like an inability to me sometimes, to see each other as human beings. I truly believe that that is what is tearing us apart as a society, and that is the biggest threat to the future of human life on this planet. It's a fact that we don't see each other as humans. We see each other as good guys and bad guys, as evil or perfect. We're not evil. We're not perfect. We're human. All of us, even the people who don't agree with you, they're humans. They're not evil humans. They're humans making the best choices they can with the information they have. There's a lot of examples that I know some of you are going to throw at me, and please do in the comments. You're going to be like, well, what about murderers? And what about abuse? And some of you are probably going to be like, what about Trump supporters? And what about socialists? And what about, right? Please throw them at me in the comments. I would love to take some specific examples and give you a new perspective on how that person is doing the best they can with what they've got, because it's even true of truly horrible acts. It's even true of things like abuse. Maybe that is a topic to do a series of videos on. If that's something that's interesting to you guys, we could certainly do that. We could bring up examples of people who you're like, well, that obviously wasn't a human doing the best for humans, right? I would love to look at some of those. But for now, I just want you to consider, what if you looked at everyone else as a human? How would that change the way you felt about them? If you caught your brain every time it tried to oversimplify and describe people as evil, how would it change the way you show up and relate? So let's take it back home. Let's take it back to your marriage. Let's take it back to the bedroom, because you probably haven't been spending a lot of time with your spouse there if you're having these kinds of political arguments. Your spouse isn't evil, right? You married this person. You obviously love them and care about them and value them. So if you want to stop seeing your spouse as a bad guy, bring your awareness to it. And then I want you to do something really, really difficult. I want you to get curious, genuinely curious about their perspective. If you are arguing with your spouse about politics, it's because you are seeing them as the enemy and you feel threatened by everything they say. It feels dangerous to you. It's really hard to be curious when you're feeling threatened, right? If there's a lion trying to eat you, you're not going to be like, oh, hey, kitty, how was your day? What does your fur feel like? What are you thinking about? No, you're going to get away from the lion, or you're going to try to kill it. One of the two, right? So as long as you're seeing your spouse as a threat, it's hard to be curious. But the opposite is true. When you're curious, it's really hard to see the other person as a threat. So I want you to intentionally cultivate your curiosity. What is your partner talking about? How can this person, right, this rational, smart, beautiful human being that you fell in love with and married, for goodness sake, come on, you married this person. You must value them. You must respect them. You must like their brain. You must be interested in them. Tap into that. How can this person believe something that is so dramatically different from you? Why is it so important to them? Why do they feel so threatened by your opinion? Get curious. Tell me more about that. That's interesting. You know, I don't actually agree with that, but I can see that this is really important to you. Tell me more. I want to learn because I care about you. You don't have to care about what they're talking about. I don't care if you agree with their politics. I don't care if you agree with anything they say. That's not what this is about. It's not about convincing one another that your opinion is right. It's about seeing your partner for who they are and wanting to know that person. Because this is what love is. Love is that desire, that curiosity that I see you, you're incredible. I want more. I want to know more. I want to know it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what I want you to cultivate. Here is your spouse. They're going on and on and on about their political ideas. Who is this person? How can we get to know them? I don't care what they're talking about. They might be talking about lizard men dancing on the moon. Fine. Tell me more. I see that this is so interesting for you. I see that this lights you up. You seem scared right now, or you seem angry. Tell me about this. Why is this so aggravating for you? Why is this so exciting to you? Why is this so important to you? Because I am interested in you, my partner, my spouse, the person I have chosen to spend my life with. I'm interested in you. This is also the best way to get them interested in you. Because when you stop being defensive, when you stop trying to change their mind and you just listen, suddenly the threat goes away. You're no longer acting like the enemy. You're no longer being the enemy. When you become the loving, curious, inquisitive spouse, it's really going to be hard for them to hold their mental image of you as that generic, threatening bad guy. So you start to disarm them. You start to break down their defenses, right? You stop being the bad guy and you start being their husband, you start being their wife, you start being their partner again. You're on their side. They can let down their guard. Maybe they can even spare a little curiosity about you because it's not dangerous anymore. Take the danger out of your home. Take the danger out of your marriage. Stop being a threat and stop treating your partner like they are a threat. Because right now, when you have those political conversations and they blow up into arguments, it's because you have drawn the lines in the sand. We are over here, we're the good guys. You are over there, you are the bad guys. And there is never going to be a way to reconcile that. All you're going to do is kill each other. And if you don't literally kill each other, you'll probably kill your marriage. The answer is not to convince your partner that you are right and they are wrong. Does not work. Not going to get you anywhere. It's going to strangle your relationship. So stop doing it. Stop trying to convince them. Stop being the threat. Stop treating them like the threat. You can have a healthy, happy marriage and have very, very different political views. It is absolutely possible. It's going to take some work on your part. It is not easy. You have to catch your brain when it is pulling those wily, like Stone Age man tricks, trying to say, nope, self another, danger, alert, alert. No, stop seeing them as the enemy. Start seeing them as your partner. You have to be intentional. You have to catch yourself when you slip, and you have to bring curiosity. Remember the person you fell in love with. Get curious about them. What's going on for them? It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. You want to know about this person because you love them. There is another element to this that I think is important to talk about, and that is setting some boundaries. Because I do talk to some people, I have a couple clients in particular who are dealing with partners who not only have different views than them, but really want them to change their behavior to fit the other person's views. For instance, perhaps you have different opinions on vaccination. Perhaps you have different opinions. I've seen this a lot around pandemic reactions on following specific guidelines, if guidelines should be stricter, if guidelines should be looser. And sometimes one partner is like, no, you really have to do X, Y, and Z. It's no longer a conversation about we have a different opinion. It's I need you to do these things so that I can feel okay. So what do you do? How do you keep the peace in those kinds of situations where your partner is not only asking you to adopt their ideology, but also to take actions to prove it? How do you keep the peace then? It's actually very, very much the same. So this is going to be a quick lesson in setting healthy boundaries. You set boundaries out of love for yourself, for your partner. What that means is that you don't do things that are not true for you. You love yourself. You are clear on what is right for you, what feels good for you, and what you are and are not willing to do. You decide that ahead of time. And that has nothing to do with your partner. That's just about you. It's about what is right for you, what feels good for you, what is reasonable for you. You decide that. And then you lovingly act on those with your partner. So you don't get defensive, you don't get upset, you don't try to convince them you're right. You say, I understand that that feels really important to you. It's not something I'm comfortable with, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not trying to hurt you. I love you, but this is really important. This is a boundary for me. They might not take that well. They might get really upset. This is where you hold the love. Maybe you get curious. Tell me about that. I can see that this is really upsetting. I can see that you're really upset that I'm not willing to do this. Tell me about that. What's going on for you? Because what's going on for them is that they're afraid of something. Like they're maybe afraid of a virus. They're maybe afraid of a political party or of what the future of our nation is like. They might be afraid of climate change. Whatever it is, they're afraid of something that might be of direct harm to them, or they're afraid that they're losing you. They're afraid that if you don't do this thing, if you don't agree with their ideology, that you're not connected to them, that you're not the person they once knew, you're not the partner they thought they had, and that is frightening. They feel like they're losing the most important person in their lives. So there's only two things to do. If they're afraid of losing you, then you connect with them. And if they're afraid of a future consequence, they're afraid of danger from a political party, from climate change, from war, from the virus, from whatever, you comfort them in their fear. right? You be a partner. You show them that you are their partner, that you're not going anywhere, that you care about them and you love them, and you sit with them in the fact that they're afraid. You can do those things without agreeing with them, without condoning, without complying, and without doing what they want you to do. I can say, no, I'm not willing to do that. I love you, and I can see that that's really upsetting. Tell me about that. What's going on? What are you afraid of? Oh, yes, I understand. And I hear you. You would really like me to do this. Tell me more. What are you feeling right now? I can see this is really hard for you. Be curious, be loving, empathize, ask for more information, repeat their words back, and say, no, I'm not doing this. I am so here for you. They might freak out, they might leave, they might yell, they might storm off. If you can hold your ground in a loving way for them and insist on seeing them as an individual, as a human being, as your partner, as a person you love, and not take on their stuff. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about what they're afraid of. Love them through their fear. It doesn't have anything to do with you. That, I'm making it sound easy. It's not easy. You have to do a lot of your own inner work so that you're not triggered by their attacks on you, because they might very well just attack you if they're scared enough. So I wanted to mention that piece of boundaries. It's a very quick overview of what healthy boundaries look like. It's not taking it personally. It's not getting triggered. It's holding your space, your groundedness for yourself, and loving them intentionally all the way through it, no matter what they do. If that sounds absolutely impossible, there's no way to do that, please reach out to me, because this is a process. Learning to set those kinds of boundaries, not getting emotionally triggered and reactive when your partner comes at you, especially with very different ideology than yours, that, guys, that takes work. That takes a lot of looking inward, understanding your own reactions, your own fears, your own defense mechanisms, unwiring some of those, getting more control over them, finding your calm core center so that you can be that kind of loving partner throughout the whole storm. Because you can do it. It just takes a little inner work. So reach out if you'd like help with that. I hope that this discussion was helpful, and go to work. This is so important. I think this is one of the most important things we can do. If we can work to see each other as humans, not just our spouses, but everybody, the reporters, the politicians, the leaders, the guy at the grocery store who has a different idea than you, the person holding a sign on the street corner. If you can see them as human, if we can see each other as human, if we can start having conversations instead of arguments, we might have a chance of making it through as a species. And if we can't, I really do think we might all just kill each other. So let's start at home. Let's start these conversations with our partners, and let's learn to talk calmly to other humans instead of defending ourselves from villains. Thank you guys for joining me, and thank you to my subscriber who asked me to talk about this topic. I'm realizing it's maybe one we should talk about a lot more. So perhaps there will be more videos in the future like that. Feel free to leave me a note in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.